99-cent rental.
This is 99 Cent Rental. I'm your host, Brian White, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Dave White. Hey, Dave, how you doing over there?
Oh, thank you for asking. I'm doing pretty good. I'm ready to talk about a month of homosexual and homosexual adjacent films. You know, it's earlier than usual when we're doing this, so
Oh, yeah.
maybe I don't have my usual zeal. I don't know.
It's a little weird. The sun's out and shit, so
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know how to handle this. And I got everybody buzzing around the house behind me, so yeah, it's a little crazy. But man, what a week, right? What a crazy fucking week we had.
What would happen?
Well, we had
Oh, right, yeah,
we had that episode that people took kind of personally.
yeah. Oh, jeez,
Criticism. Sorry for engaging critically with media, but no, that was
Jesus.
man, that's so weird. But yeah, no, good times. We picked up a lot of new listeners who I see you out there. I'm very, very glad you're here. I just wish you wouldn't listen to that Emilyville episode, because man, that's a rough one.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah.
You should take that shit down. It's fucking terrible.
No,
You know what? I say just scrap the whole first year. Nah.
I know, like we really didn't hit our stride until I think our first Pride series really is when we kind of figured out what we were doing. But man, it took a little while. But everybody is sort of like naturally inclined to be like, hey, let's go back to the beginning and listen to this, and so I can get them all in. And I really appreciate that. But man, our first like 7 episodes are pretty rough.
Yeah, work your way backwards.
It's probably a good thing, because then you can get to those early episodes and be like, oh shit, those guys weren't kidding.
They were real bad at this.
But now we're pretty good, I think. I think we're pretty good, at least. I feel pretty confident in my abilities to podcast and entertain and enlighten.
Well,
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see about that.
So it's hard to explain to someone who never had the experience what a trip to the video store was like back in the day. The shelves were choked with absolutely bizarre crap made on tiny budgets, completely divorced from any recognizable reality, and it was the best. But we tend to talk about all of them. And just before we get into it, if you're hearing this and aren't aware of our other show, Dave and I do a horror movie podcast in the weeks when 99 Cent Rental is off, called Bring Me the Axe. Our latest episode covers the Blair Witch Project, as we just mentioned. But we had a pair of great guests, Ash Kelly and Elena Earnhardt from Morbid, and they are a goddamn delight as usual. And coming up next week, we'll be continuing our Pride series with a look at Robert Wise's The Haunting. Yeah, good God, that's such a great movie, man. I can't wait to talk about that one. If you want to keep up with us between episodes, you can find us on Instagram at Bring Me the Axe Pod. Dave's over there at That Queerwolf. We have a good time. You know, if you do the Instagram thing, you really ought to consider following. And also do the TikTok thing. You can find us just by searching our name out.
Well, why you don't sound so enthusiastic about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm torn about it. I get a response, but like I can't tell. It's such a walled garden over there, and the entire application is meant to sort of discourage people from listening. So I can't really tell if anybody is coming in from over there, you know. Anyway. You can also contact us directly at 99centrentalpod@gmail.com with any questions, comments, or suggestions. Do let us know if there's a cheesy movie that you love and would like to hear us give it the business. Lastly, if you like what you hear, you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube now. Search us by name and subscribe if you prefer to consume your podcast that way. And you'd be doing us a favor by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So, get to it. It's easy.
Yeah, even if you don't like it, just subscribe and give us a 5-star review.
That's the important thing, is 5.
That doesn't hurt you.
No. And it helps us out a little bit. It's easy, as we're always saying. It's so simple. Just take a second. If you listen on YouTube, do us a favor, give the episode a like, and leave a comment. We love hearing from you guys. I just want to get that all out of the way right at the top of the show, because we're kicking off our Pride series, whole month, just like Dave said. And I'm going to give you a taste of our very first one. Here's a taste.
A police strike paralyzes an entire city and unleashes a violent new order. Suddenly, every citizen must arm and protect themselves.
What do we got to defend ourselves with?
The attackers have every kind of weapon. The innocent defenders have only their courage and their cunning to survive the siege. city. Tomorrow, yours.
Action packed.
Oh yeah, they gotta give it to you. Give it all to you right up front, including showing you everybody getting killed.
Yeah, they really gonna give up. But you know what? I would watch that trailer and be like, I want to see that fucking movie.
Hell yeah, X gonna give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty enticing trailer. You know, it's
Canada coming through again.
Yeah, fucking crazy. This is such a weird movie too.
It is very strange.
And there's nothing particular. There's nothing I can really put a finger on it about it that makes it such a strange picture. There's just a bizarre vibe about the entire thing, and I don't know. Maybe we'll get to the bottom of it just talking about it here.
It's aggressive in a weird way. Like it is a tonally a little bit strange because it's not like wild shifts of tone, but they're subtle in a way that you're like, why this feels a little humorous now, and then all of a sudden it is very serious and it is not humorous at all.
No. It's grim and it's very grimy and dark. But it definitely does. This is a movie that you know, in case you couldn't really kind of pick up the trailer, is kind of a actually not kind of it is a blatant ripoff of Assault on Precinct 13.
Yeah, this is Assault on Precinct 13. It is like one, and the director is pretty upfront about that. He was like, I saw Assault on Precinct 13, and we thought, well, he did a lot with low budget, and he does, because Assault on Precinct 13, pretty sweet movie.
Yep.
And they were like, well, we could do that too, and so they did. I mean, I like this movie. I think it's a good movie.
I enjoyed it tremendously. Like when I was watching it last night to sort of take notes, like I was like, I really like this movie. Like,
yeah.
It's not doing anything. It's not doing anything new. I mean, I just love a siege movie.
Yeah, it bangs along pretty at a good clip.
It's pretty snappy for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
And it's hard to really get down on it about being like a Precinct 13 ripoff because that movie itself is kind of a remake of Rio Bravo. Yeah. So like, I mean, it's just everybody's just kind of having fun with a really kind of simple but very effective and suspenseful concept. But yeah, there's some details about this that are very arbitrary, but they set it apart. In a very unique way. I would say that the director's politics are very much on display in this movie in a way that I really kind of appreciate because like ain't nobody gonna make a movie like this today.
No.
Too divisive. So shall we do some facts here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause not honestly, not much to know about this movie. It was just one of those Canadian tax shelter movies that if you want to know more about, go back and listen to our My Bloody Valentine episode where we really kind of go into depth on that. But yeah, this movie was made in 1983, year of our Lord. Mm-hmm. So here's some other movies that were released in 1983. Jaws 3D was released in 1983. Ooh.
I mean, do I love it? I do. I do love Jaws 3D. It is absolute garbage.
Just the worst kind of crap. Also released that year, Amityville 3D.
Oh, don't love that one. No,
utter trash, complete garbage. We also had Extraterrestrial Visitors, which Mystery Science Theater 3000 viewers will know as Pod People.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It stinks.
Yep.
And then let's see, we had a movie called Prisoners of the Lost Universe, which I don't think I've ever seen it. I think it's like a kind of a Conan ripoff, but with like maybe like a 1/100th of the budget of that movie. And then rounding it out, 1983, Roger Corman's Space Raiders came out.
Also not a very
good movie, but that's one of those ones that when we talked about Battle for the Planet,
Sexy Star Wars,
the one on our Corman episode. This is one of the several movies that just went and reused all of the space footage that they shot for that movie. Yeah. So cast and crew, we've got a guy named Paul Donovan and a lady named Maura O'Connell,
who is his girlfriend or was his girlfriend.
Oh no shit. Okay. Yeah. As I said, the latter of whom we know very little. Yeah.
I mean, it seems like so. Basically, with this whole with the whole crew, they all kind of worked together. Like they started this film company together. I think it's called Salter Street.
Yeah.
And they made a bunch of like Canadian low budgety stuff. Paul Donovan went to film school in London and then was like living there. And then when the tax shelter thing happened, he came back in order to make movies, because he was like, well, fuck it, you can't because of the way that's structured, you really can't lose money.
Oh yeah. Like 100% return on your investment. Like there's just no reason not to, because like you get to claim all of your money on as an expense on your taxes, and then keep any profit that came from this. And I'm sure that this movie was probably profitable.
This movie was actually quite profitable. I think it cost about $250,000, and they ended up making like $1.5 million.
Not bad.
And that's not. I mean, that's box office. So who knows? Well, it wasn't really available until very recently,
right,
on DVD.
Yeah, because this is a movie that like this was on Shudder for a really long time, just kind of as part of the whatever the deal Shudder has with Severin.
Yeah.
And I always intended to watch it. I just never got around to it. So glad I got to watch it now. But
the point is they all kind of worked together as part of this film group. And that's why they all work on the same movies.
Yeah, right. Because all of these names, including like some of the cast, show up on some of Donovan's later movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He is really kind of the dude who kind of makes a career out of this. He goes on to direct one of the most recognizable movies of the VHS era, DEFCON 4.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a movie with a poster that really makes an impression. The movie itself,
terrible.
I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Oh. Man,
yeah. It's a Canadian Mad Max sort of post-nuke thing, and it is particularly Canadian. And also, he creates the weirdo sort of sexy cult sci-fi series from the 90s, Lex, if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, seems to still be doing it, still be going.
Yep.
Our cast is a bunch of people who nobody's ever really heard of.
Yeah, well, maybe one or two of them.
Yeah, a couple of them. But our primary guy is a guy named Tom Nardini. Did a lot of television in the 60s and 70s, most notably a role in a show called Cowboy in Africa, which I'm sure...
Yeah, I bet that wasn't racist at all.
Which is, I'm sure was racially sensitive. And speaking of racial sensitivity, the role he's probably most notable for is when he did Redface in Cat Ballou.
Yeah. Yikes.
Oh, geez.
He was also in a movie. I don't know if it was like a TV movie or something. It was called Muggable Mary, Street Cop. And I think that might be the greatest title I've ever heard.
That's pretty funny.
Muggable Mary.
Yeah. By the time Siege rolls around, he's kind of at the tail end of his career.
Which is weird because he's like 30.
Right. And he's pretty good. Like I really like him in this movie. His character.
So I watched I listened to the commentary on the Blu-ray, and Paul Donovan, because that's who the commentary is with. It's the guy, I can't remember his name, Andrew something, the guy who directed Hobo with a Shotgun. It's him interviewing Paul Donovan. So it's kind of a weird commentary. But he kind of shits on a lot of the acting in this movie, and I think the acting's not bad.
I don't know. I think the movie, as I've been kind of talking about this here and there,
I mean, it's a little wooden, but
I find the acting to be utterly atrocious in most cases. But there's a couple of bright spots, but for the most part, it's fucking terrible. But
he's just kind of like openly shit talking these people, and it's like, come on, man.
It's like he's got beef.
I mean, they probably knew it, but like, Jesus.
You just gotta rub it in. No, I mean, that is my sort of my main complaint with the movie is that the acting is terrible. But
the people, they're not here to act, really. This is an action movie through and through.
And it is but that's the thing. It is offset by a very awesome action movie.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we've got playing his girlfriend Barbara is a woman named Brenda Bazinet, who is active as hell in Canadian TV productions. And most of the stuff that she's done, I've never heard of, but she was on Friday the 13th series. And also she was in Forever Night. She did a Goosebumps episode, and she was on Degrassi.
Oh, because the original or the new
one of the more recent ones.
Nah, boo.
But like everybody
Degrassi.
who's ever acted in a Canadian movie or TV production has also been on Degrassi. I'm pretty sure everybody who lives in Canada has been in Degrassi at some point.
I mean, Degrassi is like Canada's Wu-Tang Clan. We've all been in it at one point or another.
Yeah. And we got Drake out of it. Boo. Get that motherfucker out of here. Yep. Surprisingly, however, she didn't appear on the X-Files, which also seemed to cast everybody in Canada before it moved to Los Angeles. And
when did it move to Los Angeles? Towards the end, right?
Season 5, maybe 4 or 5. I'd have to look it up.
A band in Canada like that.
And kind of rounding it out, we got a guy named Jack Bloom who plays the dude with kick-ass hearing in this movie. Yep. And he along with Keith Knight, who also appears in this movie, were in Meatballs together. He plays a similarly nerdy character, and he also shows up in other Canadian horror productions, such as Happy Birthday to Me.
Ooh.
Yeah. And he's also a writer, but he doesn't seem terribly active today. He does appear in the movie Snake Eater 2, The Drug Buster, which is just about the most insane movie ever made.
Okay.
Yeah, but we've also got a couple of other guys. There's Jeff Pustil? Not sure how you say that guy's last name. He plays the sort of main bad guy. He shows up in a whole bunch of stuff. And he's also in a bunch of Paul Donovan stuff as well.
The guy who wrote Friday the 13th, New Blood, is in this.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Daryl Haney.
Yep. And what is it? Keith Knight, of course. My favorite dude from My Bloody Valentine. Who, I believe, as we said, completely unrecognizable from all of his other characters in that movie. Like he looks like in this movie he looks like the guy he plays in Meatballs, but definitely not the guy he plays in My Bloody Valentine.
And this is a year later, isn't it? Or 2 years later?
Yes, 2 years later. Yeah.
And in My Bloody Valentine, he looks like he's about 35. In this, he looks like he's about 20.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what it is? It's the hair and the mustache in My Bloody Valentine.
That curly handlebar mustache. It'll age you.
I love it though. It's a good look. I wish he'd held on to it. So, some taglines for this movie. These are pretty good. You heard one in the trailer. Today their city, tomorrow yours. Yeah. And then my favorite, the one that's on all the posters: fight crime, shoot back.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
That's a real like NRA bumper sticker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then another one that I found that kind of spoils a very important plot detail. Their badge is a license to kill.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Why don't you just fucking ruin the movie?
I know. So this movie is also known as Self-Defense in some markets.
That was the US title.
Oh no shit, I've never seen it. I saw it on a bunch of posters, but it's been released as Siege.
Siege was its original title. Self-Defense was the US release. It was at one point called Night Warriors, and then the German title, and this is great, is called New York 1981.
Oh no. Because it very clearly says Halifax in the movie. But then again, I get it. That was everything. We talked about that in our Bronx Warriors episode where like everything was like escape from New York, flee from New York, Warriors in New York, Bronx Warriors. Yep. Yeah, the whole thing. Everybody was escaping New York back in the day.
Yeah. So this one is actually, it's sort of rooted in a historical thing because it's based on the Halifax police strike of 1981, which is kind of interesting. I was reading a bunch about it, and the whole thing, it's a labor dispute over salary increases. And so the police decide to go on strike. And so there's nobody patrolling the streets in Halifax.
Yeah, there were
4 days.
There were for 53
Well, it's for
days.
53, but that's not actually what happened. It's only about 3 or 4 days that there is nobody patrolling the streets.
Gotcha.
The RCMP eventually steps in and they take over for 53 days or whatever. But there's kind of an interesting, because really all that happens is, like, I guess it scared the shit out of everybody because they were like, oh my God, there's going to be crime rampant. It's like, okay, easy. It's Canada.
I know.
Jesus.
But the reality of it is, because this movie exploits this very heavily, and they make it kind of sound like it was like 2 months of just pure anarchy in the city. But really, there was like one night where everything.
Yeah, it was like two or 3 days, and they just taunted the police. That was kind of all they did.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a very minor plot detail in this about why they don't have any bullets. And that's kind of rooted in that. But yeah, like shit went crazy for a couple of days, and then everybody just went back to work and shit, like returned to life, to real life. And then the RCMP came in. But like that first night of rioting sounded pretty fucking crazy, but also very Canadian in the way that it kind of rolls out.
Speaking of being very Canadian, at one point there were 2 little girls that went missing, and everybody was like, okay, time out. And like all of them stopped being on strike to help look for these girls. It was like, that is the most Canadian thing you can do, to be like, nope, strike's on hold, everybody. We got to go find these girls. Now, unfortunately, one of them had been murdered and the other one, I think, was safe. But But I was just like, God, that is so Canadian.
Yeah. So what ended up happening is as soon as the cops went on strike, there was like this kind of crowd of spectators who had gathered around the police station in Halifax, kind of to see what would happen or to just sort of see if they were actually going to do it. And they did. And so as it would happen, everybody was just like, all right, well, let's test these motherfuckers out. And so they were just getting crazier and crazier in the streets, like drag racing up and down the main strip. They started like throwing rocks, setting shit on fire, and eventually somebody started breaking windows in all the nearby stores, and people were like, well, might as well loot.
Free stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, it looks like the movie makes it look like it was the fucking Purge, but really it wasn't.
No.
The music in this movie is really interesting because it is like dime store John Carpenter.
Yeah, which is it. John Carpenter even himself would probably say he is dime store John Carpenter. Like,
yeah, but it's by a guy named Peter German, and he's joined by a guy named Drew King. And German was a member of some sort of significant, like Canadian hippie blues outfit called Luke and the Apostles, who are apparently still performing regularly around Toronto.
Okay.
Yep. But he also worked in film as a composer on nothing you've ever heard of, but he did sound effects and sound design on stuff like Scanners and Heavy Metal, and also the Care Bears movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those things all go together.
Yeah, you gotta be well rounded, you know.
My favorite was Scanner Bear.
Yeah. And honestly, I think this is a pretty solid score.
Yeah, I mean, it is 100% a John Carpenter ripoff, just like the movie, but it works.
It is.
It's good.
Because, like, even by comparison to other John Carpenter movies, like the Assault on Precinct 13 soundtrack is pretty Spartan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not terrible.
It's got a kick-ass main theme, though.
It definitely does, yeah. But yeah, it's all buzzy synth stuff. And I think they even use those, like, whatever the disco drums sound effect is on the keyboard for the sort of silenced gunshot sound effect, because it's very silly.
Yeah, it's got the gun, whatever gun package sound effect they bought for this movie is very like laser guns.
It's pretty good. Yeah, and like, unfortunately, that's about all there is to know about this movie. Unless you've got anything in there.
I do. So the reason I wanted to watch the commentary is, I mean, because there's not much to know, or there isn't much to find about this movie. I was curious. Obviously, we are starting Pride Month with this film. Why is this a gay movie? And it's not quite a gay movie, but it sort of is. And the reason I chose it is that it starts off in a gay bar. Like, that's kind of how the movie starts. It's like an assault by these vigilantes on a gay bar. And I thought,
it is, because it's a very conspicuous plot detail.
Yes. And I thought, well, why did he choose this? Now, a thing to know, and I'm sure it's probably easy to imagine, is throughout the 70s and 80s, anti-gay violence was like rampant in the US and in Canada. More so probably in the US, but so it was probably like a little bit of a rip from the headline thing. But the dude doing the interview, he can tell that he's trying to kind of get Donovan to go into that. Like, why did you choose this? And Paul Donovan is being pretty cagey about it. And you can tell throughout the whole thing that he's trying to be very careful about what he's a little bit older. He's trying to be careful about how he phrases things and what he says. Because I'm sure he's just like, oh my God, I could say the wrong thing very easily, which I get and I appreciate. But he's real cagey about it. And sort of what he comes down to is like, well, what did he say? I think I wrote the quote down. It's really weird. But he was basically just like, well, it was a thing. Like, I got this into my head and I thought, well, I'd want to see a movie like that. And it's like, that's your reason for setting it in a gay bar? But he also kind of goes on to say that, at the time, he says at the time, and also potentially in the future, he's like, it's a very believable thing. And I think that is because it was happening all the time. Like, you would see this violence happening. It was in the papers. It was on the news. Not nearly as heavily as it probably should have been, but it was. And so he was like, it was just kind of like front and center a lot. So that was probably why it got into his head. But then he says, it could happen to gays. It can happen to black people. He's like, it could happen to you and me if we're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I thought, actually, no, sir, it probably won't happen to you. But that is an interesting thing because I couldn't find any reviews for this. Because this movie actually never played in Canada.
Huh.
which is really weird. Never in a theater. They basically made the movie for the VHS market. But I found a Canuxploitation review of when the Blu-ray came out, and there's an interesting quote from it that sort of goes back to what he says, and it says, so I'm going to read you the whole thing because it's kind of long, but hold on. It says, though Siege is undeniably an exploitation flick, it does embody a message of tolerance. Donovan smartly avoids heavy-handed proclamations about the cops' attack on the gay bar. Spoiler alert. By the second act, Danielle's sexual preferences, gonna let that one slide, become irrelevant to the story as the film shifts gears and concentrates on the apartment dwellers banding together to brace against the cops' urban assault. Here, the film's point becomes clear. Every citizen is affected by bigotry and must take a united stand against it. And again, I say, no, that is not correct. It's like they both don't seem to see that the fact that this starts in a gay bar is very significant. And now it might be arbitrary to them, but it's like they're not just out causing havoc. This vigilante group is not just out fucking things up. They're very specifically going to that bar because the people there are gay. So it's like, this isn't just random violence. This is targeted violence.
Yeah.
And then the idea that, like, it could happen anywhere. Well, no, you specifically said it here. So no, it's not happening anywhere. It's like, it's kind of like the all lives matter thing, where it's just like, you don't seem to get that these people in this movie are far more likely to be victimized for a very specific reason than you or the guy you're talking to.
I know.
It's not,
I see a kernel of an idea that I think they're trying to get across, both of them, in the way that they're kind of tiptoeing around whatever it is that they're trying to say. I think what's coming out is like, really, this sort of violence and hatred is kind of like everybody's problem, and if you're not a part of the solution, you're a part of the problem. But it's all so clumsily worded and shit.
Right, because it's like they're almost not committing to that idea. I do understand that that's kind of what he's saying is like, this is, we all bear some responsibility for solving this problem, but it's like, by saying, it could happen to me, it could happen to you, it's like, no. They are targeted on purpose. It's just like, it's not black people being, in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's like, these things are happening for a reason. That's what structural racism is. That's what all this stuff is. It's not like, well, they just went out and happened to stumble into this gay bar that is in the basement of you didn't go there accidentally.
Yeah.
You said it there for a reason. And he's really weird about not saying why. And I'm sure there probably isn't really much of a reason other than this was happening a lot. It kind of got into my head and that's what we did. But it's like that to say, well, his sexual preferences. By the way, just in case anyone's curious, that is the wrong term. Preferences is the wrong term. Not a preference.
Yeah.
But to say, like, it stops being a point in the movie, it stops mattering. It's like, no, it never stops mattering because that's what set this whole movie in motion. None of this would have happened if it weren't for his sexuality and the fact that he was in a gay bar and escaped because they were murdering people. Yeah. Like, to say, like, oh, what, that becomes irrelevant. It's never irrelevant because the whole point of this movie is that he escaped and they are now trying to get him. If he was not there, he wouldn't have been in the gay bar if not for his sexuality, and he wouldn't be in this apartment building if he hadn't escaped the gay bar. So you wouldn't have a movie if it weren't for that. And I just think it's really interesting that these two people have this sort of same thing where it's like, well, yeah, we started there, but then it really becomes something else. And it's like, just because it's not the focus of the film, it doesn't mean that it's still not a sort of like a significant part of this whole plot. It's the thing that sets your whole movie in motion.
Yeah. It's the premise.
To minimize it is weird.
Yeah, the premise just hovers over the whole thing. It's just eventually you do kind of forget that that's kind of what kind of gets everything rolling, because I mean the venue changes and the Daniel character kind of takes a back seat to other characters, but yeah, like,
right.
It doesn't change the fact that,
right.
It's homophobic violence that kind of moves the whole thing. It's the prime mover behind the entire movie.
Right. And so I don't really know. And I didn't, he doesn't really seem to have a lot of insight, while doing this commentary. So you don't get much out of him. And I don't know if there's like, there probably is no more to it than what he says, but like, the idea that they're just like, yeah, but it becomes sort of incidental halfway. It's like, that's kind of a weird thing to say, given how significant this is.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm not implying anything. I don't think there's any more to it than that. It's just like, you obviously haven't thought much about this because you made this movie. You wrote this script.
Yeah, you know what it is when I thought about it last night is I was left with the impression that Paul Donovan rented Precinct 13 and Cruising at the same time and was like, what if I just took this and put this into that? And
Could be, yeah.
And that's how we kind of get the movie that we end up with. But yeah, but by the film's end, you can tell that he's definitely like sympathetic to sort of the plight of his victims in this movie, and they, because that, and also the fucking death scenes of all of the vigilantes, so satisfying.
Yeah, very satisfying. And the end of the movie, when we get to it, because it becomes significant again at the very end of the movie.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Which, God, I wish there was a way that we could have got around that, because that reveal, I was like, oh shit! At the end of it, I'm like, it's kind of ballsy, because
yeah, I was trying to figure out how can I organize this information without giving away the big twist?
I know,
at the end?
you can't.
Because it's
quite a twist,
legitimate twist, and it is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah. So let's do it.
All
right. So we open on the mean streets of Halifax, Nova Scotia,
with a weird text on screen moment.
Right. It's the card that's sort of like telling you that there's going to be there's an impending police strike.
It says the police began a legal strike for higher wages, and I thought, what odd phrasing.
Yeah.
Why would you say illegal? And my theory as to why it says it that way is that there seems to be a lot of question, or around that time anyway, about the legality of what they were doing, like whether or not they had the right to do this. And in fact, they did have the right to, because they are such an integral part of the city operations. But they did have the right to do that. They don't anymore, though.
Huh. Yeah.
Yeah, they did until 2004. But yeah, so I think that's why it's phrased that way, is that it was like, there was a lot of people like, how could they do this? And it's like, they have a legal right to do this. And they should. That's what labor unions are for.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I mean, that is really kind of something that you do have to, when a union goes on strike, they do have to be very careful about basically about the legal concerns of their strike, because if you don't and you just walk out and strike, then I believe the FBI can kind of come in and sort of treat it as like a RICO case and shit. So you have to be very careful about how you go about declaring a strike and carrying it out. But,
goddamn union busters.
I know. Fucking Pinkertons. Get out of here. Yeah. So yeah, a bunch of punks are pushing a sedan through the streets while one of the movie's protagonists, Horatio, reads the paper. Because he's a good guy and doesn't realize that they stole the car, he helps them push it until the car's owner comes running along.
So what you're talking about is this is a extended scene. This beginning prologue.
Yeah.
This is not from the original movie.
Oh, no shit.
This is like I guess they wanted to, because the version I watched didn't have this particular part, but I know what it is. They took it to various markets, and I guess in Japan, the distributor was like, well, we will take it, but it needs 10 more minutes in order to sort of meet our standard of runtime. And they were like, well, what the fuck do we do? So the distributor was like, we will pay for you to go back and shoot an extra 10 minutes. They were like, yeah, but the movie's been done for a long time.
Oh, no
And
kidding.
so they were like, well, I guess we'll just introduce you to some of these characters, because the movie itself actually opens on footage from the riot, from the outside Halifax, the police station.
All right, because
and it was the
version.
Is that in that version you watched?
No, the version that I watched, it has the footage, but it's when Goose is getting ready to go out. It's on a TV in the background to kind of contextualize everything that's happening.
Okay, so in the theatrical release, that is how it opens.
Is that on the Severin release?
Yep.
Oh no shit! All right.
And this was the only place that actually had that footage forever. It was the only place you could actually see footage of this riot on that night. And now I guess the television station who filmed it has since digitized it and uploaded it to whatever. But for a long time, this movie was the only place you could actually see footage of the riot.
Yeah. When I was doing the research for this, I watched that CTV footage of the riot. It's pretty funny. It's like cars just
Yeah, it's like spring break.
Like doing donuts and people like just getting wasted in the streets and shit.
Yeah. It's basically like spring break at Lake Havasu, the Canadian version.
Yeah. So yeah, the punks all go running, leaving Horatio holding the bag. Now the car's owner, perhaps the most Canadian man ever put on film, accosts him, gives him hell until his car rolls away and gently collides with a parked car. And then the guy just kind of drives off. And it just sort of sets the pace for this character. Now back at his apartment, Horatio encounters Chester, who is, for some reason, hoisting his motorcycle up to his apartment on a pulley for some reason. Maybe so it won't get stolen or something like that.
Chester is a baffling character.
Very weird character.
Yeah.
He's basically there to explain why they have a rifle at all.
Yeah, he's the guy who wrote Friday the 13th.
Oh, no shit. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it goes awry and like kind of falls and pulls him into the air. And like if I let go, this motorcycle's going to fall on my head. So Horatio, again, good guy Horatio, stops to help him lift it all the way.
That's right.
Just a good dude. But you know who's not a good dude? Goose.
Yeah, these homophobes.
Yeah. Goose is a guy we meet while he's setting up a perimeter of barbed wire around his house. And his poor wife, kind enough to make him sandwiches and cut the crusts off even.
God damn.
No, gets shit on when she gave all the butter to the kids and had to use margarine on his sandwiches.
Oh, why are you putting butter on sandwiches?
I know.
The fuck is this?
It's like a turkey sandwich with margarine. The fuck.
And also, why did you give all the butter to the kids?
Yeah.
What are they doing with it?
Nothing. They don't deserve butter. Give them the margarine.
They got their head stuck in the banister.
Yeah. So she consoles herself with a little pottery while Goose finishes his work, wrapping the end of a board with some metal bands.
This all like I can see why they cut this out of the movie. This sounds unnecessary.
Again, this is not in the movie? Oh my God.
No, this movie drops you right into the actual movie. Like, none of this meet the fucking cast bullshit.
No shit, that's crazy.
It starts with the riot footage and then cuts away to them getting out of the car in front of the bar.
Because even with these sort of inserted reshoots, this movie's still not 90 minutes long.
Yep, it's like 80-something minutes.
Good God. So yeah, while he's doing this, the TV in the background shows footage of the actual like strike riot. And it's like vans doing donuts and people setting shit on fire. It's a lot of fun. So then Goose's friend Rosie shows up, and his wife tries to stop him from leaving because she knows what he's up to. And he's going to go do something with Cabe, you see. And Goose reacts to this by reacting violently, and he goes to smash up her pottery studio. And so he's just like batting it around and like break. And at one point he grabs, since you didn't see this, it's fucking hilarious. He grabs this one piece of pottery and in one hand, and he's got a stick in the other hand, and he goes to like hit it with the stick, and he misses like 5 times before he's like, fuck it, and takes the piece of pottery and just smashes it on the stick instead. Fucking hilarious.
Smashes it on the stick.
Yeah.
I mean, this version actually is on the Blu-ray. I just didn't realize it was until much too late.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
that's why I didn't say. It sounds like I didn't miss much.
Not much. It's just like here's your good guys, here's your bad guys. So then he and Rosie leave. They pick up a few more dudes and they drive around the city, which is eerily quiet. And we get a lot of this basically like establishing shots of Halifax by night. And I'll tell you, this is part of like what makes this movie's vibe so weird is it is like it is a city, recognizably a city, but like it's foggy and it's dark and there's no cars on the street. It's just like dead silent. Like everybody is just like holding their breath in anticipation of the purge. It's nuts.
So Paul Donovan said, like, he's like, that is basically what it looked like for the first like 4 days of this police strike, because it was just nobody anywhere, just empty streets. It was really, really weird.
Crazy. And then just like nothing happened and everybody just kind of went back to their regular life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, now they all stop by a basement gay bar called the Crypt, bringing their sticks and weapons with them. Is this in the movie?
Yes,
Okay.
This is how the movie starts.
Okay.
And I love that they're just all swinging their weapons or like baseball furies, trying to be menacing, but it's just like they're kind of overdoing it a little bit.
They do it in every shot, sort of leading up to them kind of like busting up this bar. And they're all doing it kind of in unison. Like they were very clearly directed to do this by Donovan. So like, slap the stick against your other hand. And they're all doing it. And it's supposed to look mean and menacing, but it really just kind of looks like West Side Story.
Yeah, it has a real when you're a jet kind of vibe to it. Like it's everything is in sync. It's really strange, and they just keep doing it.
Yeah.
And it's like I can't. It's hard to take you seriously when this is so obviously choreographed.
Yeah. It's like, come on, man, we're bad guys. Let's do bad guy stuff with our hands.
And then they run down the stairs into the crypt, and I love when they get to the beaded curtain. I can't remember which one is in the front, but whichever guy's in the front sort of stops and looks disgustedly at the beaded curtain on the door, as though like there's something kind of inherently offensive and queer about a beaded curtain.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
Greg Brady had a beaded curtain.
That's true. Yeah. He really, yes, he did.
Yeah. This bar is very strange.
This, I will tell you, because I have spent a lot of time cataloging and archiving photographs of gay bars. This looks a lot like what an actual gay bar. This probably actually was the gay bar.
No shit. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because it looks like a scene. Like, have you ever watched like a movie where somebody is making a movie very clearly on no money, but they need to do a bar scene or something like that, but they just don't have the cast, or like they can't do extras.
Yeah, a bucket of blood.
Yeah, and so
just set up some barrels and a chair.
So it's just like this room that's effectively very empty. The music is coming, and the music is fucking scary ass music.
Yeah, it is real strange. It's like kind of downbeat disco.
Yeah, it's coming from a reel-to-reel player that's just kind of propped up on the bar top.
And the guy behind the bar is dressed in a sailor outfit, and I was like, it's a little on the nose movie.
Yeah, it's somehow like a little more threatening than any of the bar scenes in Cruising. Yeah. And a couple of dudes just kind of wanly dance to whatever's actually playing on the scene, because it's not whatever. Even if there even was music playing at the moment.
But this is like what like kind of, if you're not in New York or you're not in San Francisco, this is what gay bars looked like. I mean, they were just sort of like a little bit sparsely populated and so run down looking.
Yeah. So they all kind of, and also everybody who is there is just sort of staring at each other with kind of haunted expressions. And there's a couple.
Yeah, they're clearly not actors, or if they are, they're like community theater actors. I like them because there's something really kind of authentic looking about them. Like like in the 90s or even the 80s, when you would see movies like that are like, it's a teen party, and the place would be out of control, and it's like a real teen party is just a bunch of fucking idiot kids sitting around, staring at each other. And like kind of clustered in little groups. And it's like, that's what this is. This is not Cruising where the bar is jumping.
Yeah.
This is just a bunch of fucking people sitting around, drinking Moosehead Lager or whatever. And
yeah. I suppose that really is the difference, because like when they do, like when a gay bar is sort of portrayed in a movie, it's always like in San Francisco or New York, which, these are big cities. Halifax is not a big city. So this could have just been like, a neighborhood gay bar,
Yep.
But yeah, there's a couple of women there who've got a real sort of lesbian supremacy vibe to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're really, they kind of lean into some of the stereotypes here.
It's just, the whole thing is just a little out of sorts and uncanny. It just defies your expectations of what a gay bar should be. But it's really interesting. But then all of these straight doofuses invade and start roughing people up. Of course,
they come in real hot with the homophobic slurs.
Yeah.
Like even I was a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean it goes from 0 to 100 in a second. Shouted slurs, a lot of cackling and giggling.
Yeah, and so in the commentary he asks Paul Donovan, like, was it hard to get people to do this? And this is another moment where he's kind of really cagey about it. And I think it's because he doesn't want to have to be like, no, it was super easy. But he was like, not really. I mean, like, we just sort of figured this is what the scene would be. But he was sort of trying to be like, why did you want to come? Because this is a very aggressive scene. Like it is, it's violent in ways that you don't expect. It's like, it is very threatening, very menacing in this like, kind of terroristic way. And he was kind of trying to get him to like say more about that. Like, was this uncomfortable? And I don't know if it's just like maybe his age or he's not super familiar with like the way things are now. I don't know, but he seemed really reluctant to want to talk about it. He was like, nope, just a movie.
I wonder if a part of the problem is like this was just a movie he made in order to sort of get rolling in terms of like I wanted to be a director and we made this, and it's just like a movie that has left his memory.
There was a lot of that. It seemed like he was just sort of like, yeah, I kind of vaguely remember this stuff, but like it was so long ago. And but I mean, the idea, a lot of his answers, and I don't know if it was because he honestly didn't know or he didn't want to talk about it or whatever, but he really is just sort of like, nope, no reason. And it's like, there's always a reason. Like whether or not you know it, you chose these things for a reason. You made this scene, you wrote the scene to be extremely aggressive. Why would you do that? And it's like, maybe he just never gave it any thought. And that's it. It's probably that. Like he was probably just like, I don't know, it's an exploitation movie. But it's like everything we do, there's a reason for it. Just because you haven't thought about it doesn't mean there isn't one.
Yeah. Speaking of that bartender, he's doing his best to keep shit under control, but things go poorly for a couple of patrons who end up getting roughed up. Goose shows off an armband that he's wearing. It's symbolic of the New Order, some sort of right-wing paramilitary thing. And then he goes on a predictably homophobic tear, sounding like basically the only people on Earth who still use Twitter because, freedom of speech or some shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the bartender's got a hidden gun, and he manages to pull it on Goose. And the patrons, emboldened by this,
I love this.
Stand up and start demanding that he shoot Goose. And
they're all just shouting, shoot him. I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, shoot him.
I was right there with him. I'm like, you got no reason. And he's like, you can't get all of us. I'm like, motherfucker, you are outnumbered.
Yeah, all you have is a table leg.
A little metal strapped onto the end of it. Yeah. But one of Goose's guys gets the drop on him and he disarms him. So they beat up the bartender, who ends up falling on a broken bottle, which runs him through and kills him.
Now, I mean, it's a pretty gnarly scene.
Oh,
like
shit, yeah.
The bottle, like, sticking out of his back. Because they have no fucking money for any effects in this movie, and I think they do pretty good with what they've got.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the blood looks a little grape juicy, but...
Yeah, it's a Bloody Mary mix, for sure.
Yeah.
So now, realizing that he's dead, one of Goose's guys, Ian...
Okay.
Here's the thing. Ian is jumpy throughout the whole thing.
But you know what? If you are going to cast a movie for a bunch of obvious aggressive homophobes, maybe don't pick a guy who is so very clearly stereotypically gay. Because, and I am going to do an impression, and I am not exaggerating. He is basically the entire movie. It's just like, you guys, what if we just didn't? What if instead we went back? What if we went home instead?
He's got the lisp as well, which oh my God, dude. Yeah. Because the very first time I saw him, I was like, wait a second.
Like, is he a patron or is he part of their gang?
Yeah, like he's down there and he's like super jumpy. He's like, I hope nobody here recognizes me.
Yeah, which would have been a great plot point. But yeah, it is like, he is so clearly gay that it's like, maybe you just didn't have a lot of options. You're like, this guy said he'd be in the movie.
I know, like, because everybody else, they're all like big, burly men. And he is this like weenie little small fry dude.
Very squirrely the whole time.
Yep. But yeah, he's jumpy. He decides that they need to call Cabe, who's like their leader or whatever.
Oh, Cabe. And Cabe shows up looking like Vic Morrow from Bronx Warriors.
Yeah, unlike these...
dressed like a Bond villain.
He is, like, down to, like, the leather gloves and, like, the sweet jacket. Because these guys are all fucking Canadian jabronis. This dude is a real cool cucumber.
And the glove, I was like, I just kept feeling like if he took the glove off, he'd have, like, a metal hand underneath it. He's got that kind of vibe.
Yeah. And so his play here is to eliminate all the witnesses of this crime. And he lines them up, proceeds to execute each one of them.
Of course, he kills the lesbians first. Yeah. Figures.
Yeah, I know. Fucking sexist and homophobic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's some grim shit, though. Like, this is like real kind of Al-Qaeda looking executions. Like, it's pretty brutal.
Yeah, because he's got them like mouths taped. They're all like on their knees.
Zip-tied their thumbs?
Which I thought
was strange.
I have heard of this before. You can't move your arms, you know?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah. So he's going one by one down the line, and he's got like a pistol with a suppressor on it, you know, to make it quiet and shit.
And it's like a Luger, like a World War II Luger.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
in the movie, in a commentary, the guy's like, so why this gun specifically? Like, this feels like a pretty intentional choice. And he was like, no, we just didn't have any money for stuff. So like we had to ask people if they had any guns, and everybody had like weird old guns.
Right.
And he was like, this one seemed like the most reasonable one.
Right, because this is you've seen this in like Indiana Jones movies. There's a lot of those weird like side-loaded British submachine guns that also kind of appear in a lot of like Italian like crime movies. There's a couple of like M16 style rifles and shit as well. But yeah, like it's just a very bizarre collection of guns.
Yeah. And it was just because that's what their friends owned. I was like, well, your friends are very weird, because I'm pretty sure most of my friends don't own weird old guns.
No. So while he's while Cabe is doing this, one of the men who's basically on the end has managed to pull like a small pocket knife out, and he's sawing away at the zip tie on his thumbs. And eventually he manages to break free, and he runs through the streets while Goose's guys chase him. And it's a pretty awesome like set piece here, like because it's like through the streets and then up a building and then up some ladders and then down through the skylight.
One gets the impression that this was probably a really dangerous part to shoot, because there's no stunt people in this movie.
No, but like, these chase scenes are at the very. There's a little bit of artistry to them because like there's a lot of like shot from behind, so there's tons of silhouette and shit. Like it's very, very cool. But yeah, they chase him into a women's restroom, and he manages to fake him out until his plan backfires and the window suddenly closes, draws their attention. Back out on the street, this time he charges up into Horatio's apartment building. And Chester is like watching through the window with like binoculars.
Yeah.
Just because he's got nothing else to do. So
I guess.
Yeah. So now we're going to cut away from all of that. We're going to have a little time with Chester, who he and his girlfriend have a couple of friends over.
This is Horatio.
Yeah. Horatio, you're right. Yeah.
So this is the building. They all lived in this building.
That's
why they shot it there.
That makes sense. This is such a weird building too. Like,
it is very strange. It has like multiple entrances it doesn't all connect like a more modern building would.
No, it's like a duplex almost that was like built, like they built half of it and then they built the other half at a certain point. But like all of the hallways are super narrow. When we see Horatio, he's cooking like burgers
just over a hobo fire in the apartment.
Yeah, like on
a trash can fire
on a grill in the apartment. It's like he's got a hibachi going.
Yeah. Young people.
But yeah, it's like it's a very strange apartment. They've got a couple of friends over, and it's never fully clear what their role is, but I think they have something to do with like a local school for the blind.
So they do. And the guy, Donovan was like, oh yeah, I knew a guy. There was a guy who lived with us in the apartment that was his job. Like he was like a chaperone for, what did he say? He's like a chaperone for blind people who like shooting guns and bow and arrow. And I was like, well, that seems very unsafe, but okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's basically just like, he was like, oh, that's an interesting, character thing. I'm going to put that in there. There's no real reason for it. But my impression is that his girlfriend works for this school or whatever, or like a home, or, and that's why these two are there. But it's like, it's never clear, like, is one of them his brother? Like, they all seem very close. It doesn't suggest that, like, no, she just kind of dragged them along for the ride. It seems like they're all friends, but she also works there, maybe? It doesn't make a lot of sense.
It doesn't. The important part is just that they're two guys who don't see very well, but they can hear very well.
Yeah, that old ableist trope, that daredevil trope, they're going to make a lot of that one.
Yeah. I do like the fact that, like, they got the one guy with the glass to the wall, and he's like, okay, there's three of them coming up, and one of them still in the apartment. Like, there's a fog of war that's going to happen in this that they use very effectively. It's just unfortunate that it has to be that way.
Yeah.
The dude on the run, who we're going to find out his name is Daniele, he bangs on Horatio's door until they let him in. And then once inside, he tells them...
I'm sorry, was that a French accent? Was that what that was?
No. We're going to start to put a bingo card out, and Bryan attempts an accent is going to be right in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah. He tells them what happened, But it doesn't have much time because Goose and his guys show up and pretend that they're looking for an escaped crazy person. But Horatio's not buying it because they definitely do not look like the sort of people who are out there trying to round up maniacs.
And then eventually they drop the whole pretense and he says, listen, turkey, just hand over the homo and save yourself a lot of trouble. Jeez, buddy.
Yeah.
You're giving it away.
Yep. So yeah, he turns them out, slams the door. So now they try to, Goose and his guys, they try to break in by like just basically slamming themselves against the door. And this is when they reveal their true nature. They break through. The Goose falls in, basically on his face. And he finds himself face to face with Horatio, or rather his rifle, straight to his head, and ends up driving him back out. Goose's guys back off, promising more trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we got Crip survivor Daniel, and also it turns out that Chester is some kind of military obsessive.
Yeah, they're never very clear about this. He has a real mercenary vibe. He's like reading Soldier of Fortune magazine.
Yeah. So, yeah, Cabe, of course, shows up, but this time he brings some real hardware with him. He hands out a bunch of weird guns and suppressors, which all of them have silencers.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently all of their
laser guns.
Yeah, apparently all of their friends had suppressors as well for their weird guns.
I mean, maybe they're not real. I mean, they do actually fire these guns, though.
Yes. And also, he's got a rifle with a night scope. So Goose,
which was the real night scope. He was like, we figured out a way to shoot because they will shoot through the scope, so you'll see all the.
Oh, I wondered how they did that because I figured I was like they just made that up.
No. They rigged the camera to the scope.
That's pretty cool because it's a neat effect. It's like an old school like night vision scope that it's got this kind of like scan lines, but it's all in red.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So Goose goes back to the apartment, sort of shouts up to him from the ground, and he lets him know that they're in the shit. They'll be back for.
And there's some weird lighting in this scene that makes it look like kind of like a stage play. Like he's lit kind of just he's
like
standing underneath a street light.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like this weird kind of eerie blue, kind of like a purpley blue hue to everything. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, like there is a bit of artistry to this movie. I mean, it ain't great, but like it looks.
Yeah. I get the feeling that a lot of it was sort of accidental, but it works.
Yeah, I mean, it's at the very least, it's a very interesting movie to look at.
And this is where you get the first clue that they are not just random vigilantes, because one of them says, "This used to be my district."
Right. I get the feeling that there was probably a version of the movie where it just makes it clear from the jump that they're all cops, but they could have trimmed around that in order to sort of like give that ending a little bit of impact.
Yeah.
So yeah, everybody in the apartment is getting jumpy. Barbara, who is Horatio's girlfriend, she wants to leave with Steve, who's one of the blind guys. It also turns out that there is a hole in the wall between Chester's apartment and Horatio's through the medicine cabinet. And whenever they need to talk, they keep calling it a cabinet meeting.
Mm-hmm. Which is good.
Yep. Chester passes Horatio like a compound bow through it as they're getting ready. So now
Chester's a menace.
He's got like weapons out the ass. As we're gonna find out, he's also got like stuff for improvised explosives and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the fascists see Steve leaving and they waste him as soon as he's out the door.
Is this where they make Ian their point man?
Yes.
And he's just like, you guys,
I don't have any experience.
And then they give him a gun, and I was like, I don't know if it's a good idea to give Ian a gun. He's hysterical, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so when they're shooting him, the suppressors like make it so that it's kind of impossible to hear them. That's not really how those things work, but like it doesn't fucking matter. It's just it sounds like a disco drum track whenever they fire their guns.
Yep. And Keith Knight, so the reason his character dies is it's really sad. He just wants to go back to the home so he can eat dessert.
That's right.
Keith Knight dies for dessert. What a way to go.
It must be really good pudding or something. Yeah.
But their whole apartment, this like where they're living, it has like a real like rebel faction vibe to it.
Yeah.
Like they should have like a printing press in the corner or something.
Yeah, this is like Red Brigade territory.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Patrick is the remaining blind guy. He can hear fucking everything. Like as they're chasing Daniel in the beginning, like they both remark, they're like, Like there's one guy who's being chased by like 5 guys. I'm like, damn, like that's fucking good hearing. But apparently they can't hear the gunshots from the silencers. Not that would have fucking helped our plot out.
And but that's how you know that Steve's dead, because you can't hear his heartbeat anymore.
The city screams to him though. Barbara is about to leave when Horatio convinces her to hang out long enough to try and call some friends. But while she's away, she spots Steve's blood on the ground, and they retreat back to the apartment. They've also find out that the fascists have cut the phone lines.
And she's like, just give them the gay. And it's like, well, that's not very Canadian of you, Barbara.
What the fuck, lady?
Jesus.
Yeah.
You're not an ally, I guess.
So Chester now tries to cross over to Horatio's apartment through the skylight, which it seems to be how they usually do it.
Which is just like a super weird detail that is cool. It doesn't make any sense, and it just seems like it would make everything harder. But it is just sort of like it's one of the things that makes this movie, or it kind of elevates it a little bit, because it's like, well, here's just a weird detail.
It is, because it's
kind of comes into play a little bit.
It's the one way that they can kind of reliably get back and forth, and with the sniper on the roof, it makes it impossible for them to do that. So like they can't as quickly move from like apartment to apartment as they normally would, even though it doesn't seem like either of them have a hard time squeezing through that medicine cabinet.
No,
but yeah, like as Chester is trying to move, basically the sniper takes some shots at him, and he's like, "Oh shit, gotta keep my head down." So he climbs through the medicine cabinet with all of his gear.
I mean, it's kind of remarkable watching, but just with ease, just sliding through.
Yep. So down below on the street, the fascists get ready to hit the house with tear gas, while Peter listens by the window, reporting what he hears on the street. Chester turns over all of his gear, and all they have to defend themselves with is 2 bullets, 1 arrow for the bow, and a single model rocket engine with some plastic explosives and a length of PVC pipe to launch it, and a whole bunch of shrapnel. Now,
and so he says Chester doesn't have any more bullets because he shot them all at the police station on the first night of the strike.
Yep.
God damn it, Chester!
Jesus Christ, Chester, what are you doing?
I think you might be part of the problem.
Yeah. So also Chester goes around. He starts to set up some traps, and for some reason he has like smeared his face with like black grease paint.
Yeah, this shit is about to get real Home Alone.
So he connects the building's power to one of the doorknobs, and he sets a similar floor trap, so anybody who goes in the front will get shocked to death. But the fascists come in through the back door, unfortunately.
Like they always do.
And they lure the sniper's shots with a dummy. And now that they know where he's shooting from, Chester launches the rocket bomb at the sniper's position, which takes the guy out.
So this stuff is called water gel. And apparently you could just buy it in a store. It is basically plastic explosive. You could just buy this shit in a store. You had to take what he calls a weekend blasting course, and then you could just go buy it somewhere. And they did. They actually made a rocket.
That's fucking awesome.
They had like a cop, because they had to have a cop on while they were shooting, and the guy was like, "Do you know where that thing is gonna land?" And they were like, "Nope, no idea." He's like, "All right, I'm gonna go move my car."
Yeah, you would be surprised what kind of crazy bullshit you can just go out and buy. There is an explosive called tannerite that you can just buy at gun stores, and the only reason that you would buy such a thing is because when you shoot it, it just blows up real big.
See, I don't think that's a good idea.
It factors heavily into Tiger King.
God damn, and that's why it's not a good idea.
Yep. So like one of the last times I went shooting with a friend of mine, like there was a stack of this stuff, and I was like, we could just buy this stuff, and he's like, oh yeah, it's you can just get that shit. It's cheap too. So
we're all gonna die.
Yeah. So this bomb, the way they shoot it is fucking rad. It's so cool. It takes a guy out, but what they don't know is it does not kill him. But the shrapnel like ends up just all over him, like in his face and in his legs and shit,
his knees.
Yeah,
because they stuff a bunch of nails into it.
Yep. Yeah, like screws and stuff. It's so badass. And then, but also the explosion sort of wrecks the night scope on the rifle. So while this is happening, the rest of the fascists break into Chester's place. They shoot the place up, but they find no one.
Look, these Nazis have the worst hair.
All of them. Like
every single one of them is fucking terrible hair. The one Rosie, who kind of looks like a chunky Eric Stoltz from Mask.
Yep. And Goose's hair is like God, what did he look like? It's like a big white guy afro.
Yeah, it's like it looks like you know who Zero Mostel's son is?
Yeah.
He looks a little bit like him.
Yeah, keeps it under a little baseball cap, but just like barely controlling the whole thing.
That's a little sideshow Bob-ish.
So yeah, they find nobody, so they head out and around to try and get into Horatio's place, but one of them, Rosie, he stays behind. So now Horatio, Daniel, and Chester set a trap to lure his attention, and when he opens the medicine cabinet from the Chester side, they hit him with a stream of fire from a hairspray can and a candle. They shoot him in the neck with an arrow.
It's pretty brutal. And you can, when he's like laying on the ground, like gurgling blood, you can fully see the boom mic right next to his head. Like you can see the arm, you can see the microphone, whole thing.
It's just like it's like that skeleton effect in Vamp where you can see the hands of the operator.
Yep. They were like, no time. We have no time. Just keep going.
Keep going. Got to move on. We're making movies here.
But one of them shouts, they got 2 mirrors. They got a TV. And I don't really know what that means.
Right. So I don't know what the importance of the TV is, but the mirrors are what they're using to sort of like look around corners and shit. Like that's how they spotted the sniper on the roof, is like they stayed underneath the windowsill, but put the mirror up while Chester kind of lured the fire so they could see what his position was. And they keep using that. And eventually it's going to kind of blow up in their face, but for the moment it's working.
Yeah. I mean, and now we just like one by one, they're just going to Home Alone the shit out of these people.
Yeah. But yeah, oh God, like every time one of these guys dies, it's fucking awesome. It's just so great. So yeah, they come running back and they find Rosie bleeding out on the floor, but they can't understand how he got killed because they don't know. That's the thing. This is this fog of war shit I keep talking about. They don't know about the medicine cap. And why would you? Because that's a weird detail that the places are linked. But apparently, like in certain like cheap apartments, that was pretty common.
Yes.
Yeah. So now the rest of the fascists, they head back down to the street. Goose stays behind, talking to Cabe on his radio. And Horatio quietly sneaks on him through the medicine cabinet, tries to shoot him with the rifle, but like it doesn't go off. He forgets to chamber the round or something like that. But he accidentally gives up their secret for how they're moving between apartments, and now they have to like retreat from the bathroom. So yeah, Chester ends up getting shot in the hand because what ends up happening is Goose goes through like points, like basically stuffs his body through and just like shooting wildly with his machine gun. And he gets shot in the hand holding the mirror out to sort of see where they are. Now Goose and Ian head down to try and come in through the front. They run into a neighbor, the guy who keeps commenting on the weather. Because we keep,
the poor rummy who lives downstairs.
Yeah, we keep seeing him, and he's like, "Yeah, good day, eh?" And then
not an actor, just a guy who lived in the building.
So yeah, Goose and Ian, they run into him, they fucking hose him down. He says like, "Good day, eh?" And he's like, "Not for you." Blasts him.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Goose goes from like pesky to psychopath pretty quickly.
Yeah. Ian runs up the steps, tries to catch our survivors in the middle, but the guy they left on Overwatch opens up and shoots him instead. So awesome. Yep. Taking advantage of the chaos with the rifle fixed by Peter, Horatio jumps out and shoots the Overwatch guy straight in the fucking face. So now Goose, the only clown left, runs for it, steps straight into Chester's shock trap, falls down dead.
Awesome.
And I love it. As he's sliding down to the floor as he dies, there's a shock sound effect that makes it sound like he's farting himself to death. So yeah, just about all of their ammo is gone. They've got one bullet left, but they think that they're safe now. And they don't know that the sniper is still alive and that Cabe is down below in his car. But everybody rounds up all the fascist weapons and they hang tight. The sniper tries to get his scope working again, but it's completely fucked. So Chester leaves to head to the hospital, have his hand looked at, but Cabe is waiting for him, gets him from behind with a girl, strangling him to death. I know, such a bummer, because like as ridiculous as that character is, he really grows on me and he becomes like one of my favorite characters. Mm-hmm. So when they get him, I'm like, God damn, poor Chester. So in the apartment, Horatio unloads all the weapons, stashes them next to the ladder by the skylight. Daniel tells them about Cabe, and everybody assumes that because they never saw him with the other guys, that he must have been the sniper, kind of setting us up for a boss fight.
And now I would say if this movie starts to drag anywhere, it's here.
This is a little bit of and it's only about like 5 minutes before it sort of like moves into the final phase. But given the pace of this movie up to this point, slowing down maybe not the best move. Like they should have just accelerated all the way to the end.
Because it's a real cat and mouse thing where it's like, okay, you're dragging this out a little long at this point.
Yeah. So when they don't notice, Cabe sneaks across the roof, silently steals the guns that they left by the ladder. And what you see is just, you kind of like see his hand like gingerly like lower down, kind of like pick it up by the barrel, pull it up.
Yeah, it's a little silly.
One by one. And then
you'd think the deaf kid would have heard that.
yeah. Horatio and Peter, however, are in one of the rooms kind of hashing out an inconsistency, because who were they talking to on the radio if the guy on the roof, who they think is the leader, was dead, right? So now they got a little bit of suspicion going on. Barbara, meanwhile, retreats to the bathroom to clean up. She doesn't know that Cabe is watching her. He gets the drop on her and is going to stab her, but she manages to grab some scissors and stab his hand, causing him to drop the knife and run. And then they find that the guns are all gone, and that Cabe is tied up the only way out, so they have no escape but through the roof. So Daniel starts to chop at the door with this hatchet that he's got to try and break through, while Horatio goes up to the apartment and try to escape out a window. For some reason, Peter, the blind guy, like follows him up to help him.
Yeah, because he's like, oh, it's going to be too dark or something. It's basically just like, I have super hearing, so I'm best suited for this. And it's like, no, you're blind. You're definitely not best suited for climbing around on the roof while someone shoots at you.
Yeah. So like, and that's pretty much what happens, because the sniper manages to get the scope working again. He nearly shoots Cabe, which drives him back into the apartment. But also Patrick is like sneaking around on the roof for some reason, and he ends up getting hosed.
Because he's like, I'm bleeding real bad. I can't feel my legs.
But not even that. He's so chill. He just got shot several times, but he's not dead. He's just not doing too well. Definitely not acting like a guy who just got shot several times.
Nope.
So Horatio basically talks to him and tells him where Barbara is. And Cabe is just below them in Chester's apartment, and he hears them, and he heads through the medicine cabinet to get her. And so now, with the scope completely fucked, the sniper just kind of picks up his shit and leaves. And Danielle and Barbara manage to break through the door, and they find Chester's body on the other side. Sad times. Barbara turns around, heads back up to the apartment, armed with a...
Yeah, she's like, you stay here. It's like, bitch, you don't split up.
I know, you never split the party, man. This is bad news. She's got a big-ass knife, ends up stabbing into the shower through the curtain, just on a whim. But luckily, she hits Cabe, who is hiding there.
Because they were probably like, all right, we got to wrap this shit up somehow. She just randomly stabs into the shower at the end?
I know, because the way you're also being kind of misdirected by the camera to think that he's elsewhere, you know. But yeah, she ends up getting him, and he falls through. He's hiding. We think that he's badly hurt. He's about to fight with her with whatever he's got left. But he ends up getting shot by Horatio with the last remaining bullet when he shows up in time. So they embrace, but Cave's not quite done. We get like one last sort of move. While they're not paying attention, he tries to pull his gun and shoot them. But before he can make his move, Daniel hits him in the neck with the hatchet, finishing him off.
Yeah,
and it's so
queer vengeance.
Badass. It's so awesome.
Axed in the neck. So apparently Donovan said he wanted to have the gay character have the final kill. He wanted to show the audience that Daniel was capable of fighting back and protecting himself. And I was like, okay, but you also said that this stuff doesn't matter. So it clearly matters. It's running through your whole movie.
Yeah. So
I think maybe Paul Donovan needs to take a little time to think about this one.
Reflect on this movie that he made in 1982. Yeah. But it's definitely the most satisfying of all the kills in the movie.
Yeah, It is. It's just this movie just sort of bangs along, and you're like, oh, God, everybody's dead all of a sudden.
Yeah. And so as the sun rises on the city, we see the sniper limping off to live another day, which I was, when before knowing how the movie ended, I was like, what the fuck? That's not fair at all. That sucks. But we get a little title card, which informs us that after 42 days, the strike was over. The cops went back.
It's actually 53 days.
53 days, yeah. The cops all went back to work. We see a little park somewhere in Halifax where a mother plays with her daughter. The little girl rolls her ball, which is picked up by the sniper, who is now wearing a police uniform.
Dun, dun, dun.
Roll credits.
And you know what the worst part about all of this is that these fucking guys never helped out on the picket line.
No, they had their own little plan. They're going to go off and just terrorize gay people.
So he asks him, why did you make them police officers? And he said, it's a magnet for people to do bad shit, and the uniform allows them to do it. It's completely believable. And I will say, it's not even just believable. It actually happened a lot. These types of things happen. In Boston, there was, in the 80s, a series of fires being set. So this was when there was a lot of funding, good questions over funding of the fire department. And so a bunch of the firefighters in, I don't know what, it's Boston, so it doesn't matter, was like going around setting fires in order to prove that they were necessary so they wouldn't cut their budget.
Oh, right.
And they were setting gay bars on fire. A bunch of other firefighters got, I think, sanctioned or whatever for like harassing patrons of gay bars. This shit used to happen all the time. So it's not like it's that unrealistic to be like, oh my God, they're police. It's like, yeah, because they also used to do this shit.
Yeah, it's a ballsy ending that like when I saw that, I was like, holy shit, man, like that's some real shit right there. Because like, I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, I mean, like you fucking know where we're at, but like, you're probably aware of it. But if not, like look up LA County sheriff's gangs. Like that's some fucking horrifying bullshit that is, verifiably true. It's unfucking real. So for like, it, particularly in the 1980s, and maybe it's just because it's not a movie made in America, nobody would have thought to have done this in the 80s. They definitely would not do this right now, where the cops are portrayed as fucking murderous villains. Like it's just.
I mean, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it so unceremoniously. Like I think you could make this movie now, but it would be different. It would be a very obvious. It wouldn't be a twist at the end. It would be a plot line that runs through the whole thing. Like they're belonging to the police. Like it would be an agenda rather than a big reveal, because the reveal is jarring.
I'm sure it would be siloed as hell to be like, just so we all know, not all cops are like this. But like in the context of this movie, like the impression that I am left with is that Paul Donovan is like. Yeah, like this is definitely something that is endemic to the police, like.
Yeah, I mean, that was essentially what he said, was like, this is he says, he's like, obviously not all of them, but like, this is a role in society that attracts people who are aggressive and who want to enact violence. And that is a thing that really happened, like started to happen more in the 70s for lots of different reasons. But in Canada, there was a lot of concern about giving police too much power or giving authority too much power. And that was kind of what a lot of the panic was about, was like, oh my God, we've invested so much in these people for our protection and safety that now that they're not here for 4 days, everybody's, shitting their pants. Like, the police as we know them today aren't that old. It's only a couple hundred years that we've had this type of system. Yeah. And so there was a lot of concern, like, what have we done? Why have we given these people like all of the, we kind of invest so much in them to save us all the time. Like we're not really capable of doing that on our own. And that's kind of what this movie is a manifestation of, maybe a little bit unconscious, I guess, but you can see it. Like it's this idea like, no, you can save yourselves. You shouldn't have to, it shouldn't come to that, but like that was kind of what was happening in Canada. I find all of this, Canada is not that far away, obviously. Mm-hmm. And their culture is very similar to ours. And yet I'm fascinated by watching, because I've been really into Canadian movies for the last year or so. I've been kind of exploring that. And there's a lot of interesting stuff around crime, because I think we have a tendency, obviously, to think that they are not as aggressive or not as a violent culture. And they're not. But there is a lot of crime there. There was a lot of crime there in the 70s, and a lot of border stuff was really dangerous. It's kind of interesting to think we have this perception of Canada that's been largely shaped by television, and then to learn like, no, it's not quite what you think.
Oh yeah.
It's
like,
interesting,
especially over the last couple of years. Like some of the more like politically motivated kind of like public demonstrations that you would sort of expect to kind of originate in like MAGA America like the truckers freedom convoy and shit like that. Like all of that stuff like originated in Canada. And it's mostly because like in the same way that like Republicans here sort of think that like Obama was this like cult leader, they've got their own version of that in Justin Trudeau, which just like leads to the same kind of conservative hysteria and paranoia that sort of emerged from kind of like, oh shit, we had a black president for 8 years. Like, what has happened to us?
It's also like an equally massive country that's like you're not going to get a lot of cohesion among these people because they're so disparate from one coast to the other. Like I would say probably even more so than the US, it seems a lot of the time. And there's a lot of like rural, like really, really rural parts of it. Yeah. But I think it's really interesting to see how it sort of manifests in film. It's pretty fascinating. And this is, I think, one of them. I think this is a very successful movie. It is exactly what it is. Like there's nothing, they're not doing anything special here, but they just do it really well. And it's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
You cheer for the heroes and you cheer for the bad guys. And, especially coming off a movie like, we watched Blair Witch, and you and I, quite famously now, I guess, are the villains of the piece. I don't know about you, but I have a really hard time connecting with any of the characters in that movie, such that when bad things happen to them, I give a shit. Because I don't think they're very likable, and you don't spend any time, you don't get to know them in anything. And in this, you just have to do a little bit of work.
I was going to say,
all of a sudden you like
it's what you get to know, what you know about these people, what you learn about these people is the surface of the surface. But even that goes a long way. Like Chester is an utterly ridiculous character. He's the guy who just happens to have all the stuff that they need, but. He's
like a walking contrivance in this whole movie.
Such a bizarro character that like when he dies, I was like, oh man, I fucking loved that guy. You do not know anything about Horatio except that he's just sort of like has a tendency to want to help people. And
even that you wouldn't have known it had you not watched that. I mean, obviously, throughout the whole movie, he is sort of the good guy. Without that intro, you wouldn't see it.
Yeah, and that's all you need,
right?
Just in the context of this movie, to like this character and really want to cheer him on. Goose and his fucking fascist goons are so cartoonishly evil that when they die, like you have no recourse but to be like, that's great, that's awesome, I love everything that's happening right now.
Everybody is a cliche, and yet it just takes a little bit of work, and it works out really well. Because I think this is a great movie. I enjoy it.
Yeah. I'd never seen it. I had only really kind of barely heard about it. I'm glad you brought this one to my attention because I really, I watched it, and I almost watched it kind of like twice back to back. And when it came time to do it again to like really kind of go in and do the notes, I was like, I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, and it's not. I chose this because, spoiler alert, I chose all 4 movies this month. I chose this one because it's not an obvious choice.
Yeah,
and it shows a side of sort of queer life that I think we don't talk about. For obvious reasons, it's difficult and it's a hard thing to dig into, and it provides a platform to be like, this is a very accurate thing that really happened. And it sort of shows this the kind of reality of life in the late 70s and in the early 80s. So as much as it's not a queer film, I think it does more to portray the accuracy of queer life than a lot of movies have to this point.
Yeah, I think for the first 2 picks that we're doing for this month for Axe and 99 Cent, we're kind of easing into it because the back half of this month is going to be like wacky.
Yeah,
pretty good. So speaking of that, what do we got coming up next?
Well, we on this here 99 Cent Rental will be back in 2 weeks with the cultiest of cult films, with the midnightiest of midnight movies, the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I cannot fucking wait. Cannot wait. To talk about that. That's going to be a deep fucking dive. There is so much to learn about. There's so much to talk about. Goddamn, that's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to do that one.
A movie that I think is formative for many, many people.
Yeah. So we will be back in a week with 99 Cent Rental as we take on The Haunting, and we'll be back in 2 doing the Time Warp again, even. with the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So be here